this gurgling thing called love. Shrink, they said. And they paid us to get smaller, and they hit us. And they paid us to disappear, and they smashed us. And they paid us to bury ourselves, and they pissed on us. And they paid us to lie on top of each other, and they kicked us. And they paid us to smash each other, and they smashed us. Paint their bodies, they said. So they paid an artist to paint our shrinking bodies red so they would not lose us. They paid us and covered our bodies and sat us in bleachers and formed our bodies into names and symbols we did not recognize. And they paid us to smile sweetly as we smashed each other. Then they brought in fathers and they paid them to tell us stories about the moon and how the moon enters our bodies and we enter the bodies of the moon, and they paid us even more to say, Dada, we love you because you are a friend. And the fathers ran out of words and they paid them more to find more words, and we said, yes, Dada, we love you because you understand your authority over our bodies, and they paid us to say this, and they whipped us and locked us in cages. And we said, yes, Dada, we love you. We will merge into you, and we kissed their bodies because for once in our lives we felt love. We kissed them and they paid us, and we praised them and they paid us, and they struck us and they shackled us in the back of a pickup truck that drove into the mountains. For they wanted us to document the mountains, record the mountains, they said, as they kissed us and struck us and paid us and loved us. For they wanted us to tell the evaluating bodies that the mountains deserved to be part of the country, but they themselves did not want to be responsible for this declaration. So they paid us to say the mountains are part of the country. Then they smacked us and shoved our faces in feces and told us we had no right to proclaim that the mountains were a part of the country. Who were we to decide what constitutes the country? Repent, they said. And they took away our money and they kicked our lips and noses, and we bled and they collected our blood and dripped it on us and soaked coins and bills and blood and shoved them in our mouths, and we repented, and they said, we will pay you to eat each other's skin. And they gave us dollar bills and little knives to scrape the dead skin off the bottoms of one another's feet, and they watched us lick and swallow everything. And they told us it wasn't enough. And they told us to eat more dead skin, but it wasn't enough. And they made us scrape the scabs from each other's ankles and elbows, and they paid us to eat the scabs, and they smacked us when we didn't, and it wasn't enough. And they asked us again whether or not we thought the mountains deserved to be a part of the country. And we did not know what response would generate the payment and blows, so we remained silent, and they liked this, so they struck us. And they paid us for remaining silent, so they could not stand to hear the sounds of their own voices. They wanted to hear us cry, and they wept. They wanted to hear us breathe, and they wept. They wanted to hear us eat each other and love each other, and they wept and they beat us. And they asked us if the mountains were decentralized, autonomous structures. What is a mountain? We asked them, and they paid us, for this was the right question. And why should public funds be used to preserve this mountain, we said. And they paid us and they spat on us, for again, we had asked the right question. And what is a body, we said, and why should public funds be used to preserve it? And they beat us, and we did not know why. And then the birds saw us, and the wolves and sheep and coyotes saw us, and they were on our side, and we prayed we would dissolve into the mud or disappear into the piles of bodies gathering along the sides of the road that weave through the mountains, and they paid us. And there were immigrants on the roads, and they paid them to hiss, and they beat themselves. And the immigrants sold bottles of Coca-Cola and wool scarves and roadkill, and we paid them, and they gave us drinks, and they shook our hands and told us that in order to survive in the rotten carcass economy, we needed to understand complex calculations, and we needed to be able to describe the ability of our bodies to exist outside of the algorithms they had used to create us. And they paid us. And they took away our shoes and socks when we spoke about algorithms, and they beat us and paid us. For they knew the immigrants were doing things with mathematics we could not understand. And we wanted to know what gave them the authority to verify our identities, and just for thinking this thought, they beat us. And then a baker came into our cage holding a memorandum written for the purpose of providing impoverished bodies like ours with useful tips for handling reinventions and total corporal transformations. And he shoved dollar bills into our mouths and punched us in the teeth and told us that the mountains were a prison, that we should love them. And then he filled our mouths with dirt and shoved dollar bills into our underpants and bloodied our lips and noses. And they took us out of our individual cages and threw us all into one common cage where we had no choice but to live like parasitic bodies, one inside the other. And they paid us more, but there was nowhere now to spend the money, for we had no room to move, and there were no longer any immigrants from whom we could buy roadkill or Coca-Cola. But they paid us more and pushed our heads deeper into the bloody puddles that formed on our partners' backs and bottoms. And we filled each other's mouths with leaves, and they paid us. We wondered if the blood of those we loved, and the blood of those who paid us, and the blood of the dead birds, and the blood of the immigrants who were doing things with mathematics we could not understand. We wondered if all this blood would one day fertilize the earth, and might this not be beautiful? And they beat us, and they loved us, and they paid us.
1. To know a character, it has been said, we must have at least one detail about what they wanted. Those mornings, none of 3 sleeping dogs looked up from the red dirt shoulder where piles of rocks got hammered into piles of smaller rocks. And the children clapped, maniacs, hawking sweet gary from the jacaranda shade. Honey, forget what I said about Paris. My first love was Sierra Leone, her bad promises, skin-tight jeans and stringy mangoes, her shredded cassava leaf to float the palm oil sea. Such slow laterite roads. I'm not fast, but I am predictable, freckled and dripping up the hill. And so your tribal name for me will be white woman jogging. For Tufu or Li Po would know what to say next, floating home over deep black water. Boat made of stone, boat sewn of rib, my chest closed in a rusty zipper. Empires rise, people suffer. Empires fall, people suffer. 7, 1991. And if on that 29th day of April, when it rains on Joan of Arc entering Orleans and on New Orleans, falling to the Union, and on the laboring mother of Duke Ellington, born Edward Kennedy in D.C., and on the collapse of the Easter Uprising, and on the bunker where Hitler marries, and on the already wet hair of a truck driver named Sutcliffe admitting to the court that he be the Yorkshire Ripper, and on Taylor, Texas, 2 inches in only 10 minutes, and up on Mount Uriel, rising even greener above Freetown, I turn and turn the shortwave for any news of the coup as the shooting clatters even closer through the brush. But the BBC reports only Florence Street, that the beaten man is called King. Reports Los Angeles is still burning.
I hung you, you dazzled me, you ate the star. There were star parts in your lungs, shards of share and light. I hugged you, you were fire, you said. I measured you, there were small parts, bits. A notebook from before, bark, something green. Star, parts, ash hung. We swept into the fire, the bottle was swept. All light dazzled, it was snow. Maybe this will be the water, the trees, gray ash, and the vision complete. Image where you lay across blank page, the park deserted, the park restrung, a trust in bottle and finishing blindly. I did catch that tree, I did drown that vapor, it was cold, you poured me, the ash shook, the fire spoke, the ceiling cleared, all lungs deserted, such light this. I crouched to where you were, I put my lips to that tongue, that shell. There comes a day when you touch it, this separate, this dissolve, you touch it, as something rises, hollow, hard stone, which to pick, which to choose, all meaningful or meaningless hard litter. It could be anywhere, it could be nothing. With one finger, gingerly but no hesitation, is it? We remember tears which come fresh but are not for sale, which come flush but stop, memory just before extinction. The innocence in the abundance, the certitude in the sale, the miracle in all that measure, the starting to clear. It is green and has the look of algae if it were not so late. I remember when you used to say and hear, impoverishment, is there abundance here? My hand is for you but also has no meaning. I come to you without scales, without language, we do not embrace. A stone is a thing that cannot be filled, nor the bottle, nor the storm that rose. The innocence in the inscription, the many kinds of assonance is water, all hollow jug, it filled. For a long time it was just in the front as figural, then at the same moment as an awareness of time, the face in your hand. To take without the ripping, to distinguish the matter from the shade, to get closer to the essence that had fallen behind itself. All this faded as the sun eclipsed itself and all that we were burning to see. Sometimes you take from me slower, hold something, hold long sigh, memory, breath, distinguish it from the rest. I let it fall. Once on the floor, it will enter back into the concrete. I do not have this discernment, the brevity too split, the sun too piled, the scent too pallid for now. Because you do not speak, it becomes fall, but I know from your gesture that it could become globe. I took from the dream what could not be caught, I folded, I planned, I released, the frame swam, the curvature buckled, the century seized. But really it is early, untainted and still until stained. The cloth could not hold, it was not meant to. I lay my head against your cloth heart, which moved. I fingered entire, I forgot the sentence. My head, a bag of stones. The sentence was magic, it opened the door. And for whom is there also water? If in the basin there is chalk instead of water. There is the sun in front of them, the sun that won't burn, how round, such smooth word. There is the ache in this part, the obscuring century, the bullfrogs jumping out of the lake, as though someone tore them, but from what, from where, when they were just so close. No one will know what happened to them on the other side, the gestures that stayed to die or to live. Does this continue, does this uncontinue, the essential failure of language, the book that I cannot give them? In passage to the sun, if I were another person, I would be able to write a beautiful book for them and translate its water through the sun. But there is this I, and it is unmet. You do not know that my skin is repairing itself, that the work is slow, that I stopped dreaming of blue, that I separated the outside, that no pot will ever be met, that there are pains in the earth, that the earth is fired, that the bowl is so hot, that it is uncomfortable to lie down in the basin alone. A gentle wave caught in itself separate from sea, this wave pattern releasing an art that gives no substance, no fire. It was blue and dawn in the morning, it was night very deep, language was not instructive, you slept. I climbed out of the bed, the matter, courage falls to the ground. I give you this charred earth, this damaged root, to do with it what you will. How to restore gift, besides what dangled, and the contagion that falls. One person moves towards another person, many years after person had been introduced. It is heat. A person wears white and black is weary. A person wears green and brown is nervous and like a light. A person is like a sieve. There is an opening that moves. There is a fire that takes, a train that removes our night. There is that solitary tree, that solitary self. What do they speak of? There is something unformed in a person. This represents great passion. There is something dimly lit. There is a growing garden of weeds, a backward glance, you say. As they meet, one on the ground caught, one in the sky borrowed. If they could speak, they would say, we make a star. But luckily they can't speak, don't speak. And I still have to go to that burial in the ground, and there is still the rock to be carried, the soft bundle so brief. What radiated was so small, debris I would say if I had touched I then, but life was a slot and so small. One person passes another, this becomes language, this gesture. how to restore gift. I listened most closely to that which I did not understand. Existence, is it singular, does it move, what happened to it in the bucket? There is such freedom if you listen too deep. I resolved to carry that which was not there. Slowly, they move up the tree. Thank you.
To write with strings so close, the ties sweeping and busying themselves. Inside the small apartment, I hear every move. If we go out with a purpose, making plans, basic gestures toward activity, a resilient barricade. Center all these competing intimacies alone, at home, in the temporal realm. Everything, unexisting pulse, relations in the fire drawer. Go ahead and pull it open. Let what's inside engulf your face and surround the army you populate your outlines with. Let your decisions all be wrong and questionable, like prayer. Before the monument there was a mountain. Before the mountain there was dirt, and each surface was beheld with wonder. I miss the formative decorations, the love, the revolution turning on a previous axis. The lowering coast, build a seawall in between your heart and the television. Auxiliary forces, prepare dinner-sized news. I can't look. I feel bad about not looking. When I close my eyes, what do I see? Tough expectation, you messages and I messages, driven for the driver's sake. Everything is almost exactly the same since you left. Accumulation of all the days. Things have gone missing without being noticed. Red, blue, silver, yellow. Please take a color. Take it and put it under your face. Let the color melt inside your body, traveling between systems. Let it bust and waylay the convections. Use the colors to inflate balloons, to hang on your door. This is a plea from the body to shower the river with something radiant and proud, something deserving of triangulation. I don't talk to anyone in poems anymore because what I want to say most is too practical. Distance. I was thinking about distance as I was walking over here, but not like physical distance, but rather a staggering sort of distance, a hybrid of mental gait and profundity that hovers above like a cloud almost full enough of rain to rain. The cloud is connected to and responds to our movements, responds in kind to our words. It's blanketed and capability to comprehend the words we think or the words we speak. And by doing so, it sets a non-physical force that results from our living in a different motion, not necessarily following our physical one, but sometimes it can. And it isn't so much that this blanketed cloud changes future or subsequent actions, but it does grow and prime causations. It does remember all the words and actions and thoughts that came before. And in a way, it is like it is keeping tabs on you and keeping track of missteps or mistakes or accomplishments. It is a knowing entity without judgment, and yet the cloud has become so full, not only of you, but of him and her and families and countries and wars and diseases, that it is seeping. Differentiation between the staggering distance and our physical existence is increasingly difficult. One thing does not so much cause the other, but each could not exist alone. It is all so reliant now. And you too notice your reliance. Down here, and not in the cloud, you feel that way when the sun crosses your bed in the morning, how you pull yourself to the shower, out the door, to the train, to the desk. Ever stationary, but with the portal to the fragments of the blanketed cloud, glimpses that provide information we increasingly have less space for. So the distance conflates, the distance in the blanketed cloud and the staggering sort of distance seeps down into a physical disrupting routine. Not enough to alter it, just enough to give a puncturing feel to giant sweeps of the day. At moments in conversation, when you know that you should be feeling an emotional response, or that you should be participating or feel participatory, or moments when a vacancy overtakes your face and the emptying remains. But there is always a returning, usually for practical reasons. The phone rings, an email arrives, it is time to leave, to carry your body home, or because we simply forget. And it is a gift to forget, to be in the sleeping cloud only to just as quickly not, to be an amnesiac, however briefly, to our knowledge of the staggering distance. We are able to forget because we know that it is there, and for a while, everything is fine. Thank you.
The ache. Maroon lint from the dryer makes me wonder what I wear. Dog's leash sprawled on the carpet, a bereft beer opened and left overnight. I have an irrational fear of venereal disease, like I'm standing in the street's puddle and something insidious springs from damp ankles. To grind in the disposal woeful eggs and onion skin. Sometimes I'm afraid I want to get married for the wedding and have children for the names. If I tell you what I fear, it's easier. Fruit flies hover like lost freckles. A watermelon hacked into rose quartz is what glimmers. To wash and wring out words, they're not cleaner or softer. They feel. I'm marooned and recovered by language daily. We've all swallowed a seed to see what would happen, or snapped an apple core into an hourglass. In this ice cube hour, I make myself visible. Rent is a place for feelings. I open the birdcage roof to water the plants. I've never talked to the dead, though I've prayed to a stuffed animal and a cloud. Please, let the plane land in one place. Or, please, let this work out between us. Something like a faith in pushing words through the air. White dog hair on a gray sweater reminds me not to care about certain outcomes. How many times have we invented wings? What words will you make? Swarming with seascape, I'm looking for a breeze. Names squirm with sticky melon children. The pull of letting. Now I mouth, let this be okay. Look forward to watering plants. Look forward to the ache of each word and how they skip gleefully over the sea before sinking. This is a new place for feelings. A wet castle grows under the waves. It doesn't fear. The ache. The sea isn't even close. I learned that the face is not enough. If you're the quarry, where is the cart of extractions? To gather like an invitation. An arbalest zings through trees. Wind like a treaty cannot wait. Sometimes the war warbles. I will send you lavender and antimatter. I will send you the splintered telephone. I will send you a blamable cufflink. I will send you cucumber moves. The infinite stretch of a black hole is nothing like me. Nothing like the acute faith that unfreezes the face's language. Had you flown the quarantine flag in early light, well, what help could have? What kind of help? Sometimes I miss myself. Sometimes I gather dead bees in a soapy satchel. Weather is whatever's there. My blue veins circling. I have faith in you. It's my best offer. It's my only offer. Twirl a dirty curl with one hand and type with the other that the forest holds. Creativity is survival. I'm trying not to miss myself anymore. It has to do with feelings. A few words ignite and signal biplanes swooning through the chest. Most only ash to anger, which these lilacs extinguish. The sea is not wine dark, it is lilacs. My tresses, mercy. If you give a feeling away, then someone else can help. Mortal kite, the snap of an inchworm crayon, and letting it creep out of us. Alleviation is a certain kind of space, quavering. Unlike feelings, we cannot eventually assuage language. Ash caught in my blonde. I'm not trying to reach anything. I am trying to reach through it. The ache. Standing in a raggedy yard as Jen takes photographs to send her sleeping boyfriend, we consider rent and location. We consider biking in winter. Sela smells good today, and I tell her so. Her kimono reminds me how, as a child, I searched for an object to make me unique. Is effortlessness a personality trait? I tried a ring on each finger. I tried Billie Holiday. I tried root beer milk. Objects cannot do this. Summer is due August 30th. Farah is having a boy. In Turkey, Julie, mountainous with twins. I hear baby Ione gurgling through the phone as I talk to her mother. Frogs and kiddie pools will collect into temporary pets. I don't own a couch anymore, so my dog sits in the chair next to me, and suddenly it feels like a waiting room. If you're with someone when they want to die, then you're a type of weather. As a gift, my sibling replaces my bicycle's stolen tire. My sibling with lighter tresses, with no tonsils, and faith in this country. I'm here because I'm not ready to leave the feelings, each feeling a lung swelling like linens on a line's breeze, to let the yard fill. Seth, Emily, Arda in Massachusetts, with muscles and thin steeples. My feelings will visit. Disclosures. I've read The New Yorker since 4th grade, which probably makes me a jerk. I twirl my hair nonstop if I could. Washing dishes is the only chore I like. I choose the sea. Sometimes, instead of conjuring the flower's design, I see its name in white reflective letters and blame street signs in Denver. I break and lose sunglasses because new weather crushes memory. Umbrellas, too. The closest I get to anger is sadness. If we could inhabit feelings more than spaces, or this space starts a feeling I can carry somewhere else. I vacuum before you leave. Coastal kinship and milkweed for monarchs. Certain anxieties I seem to welcome. Let the gauge hit empty before refilling the tank. Wait for the due date to send the electricity check. The tallest bookshelves stilt precariously forward. That I will fail to understand what I read. Driving my sibling to the airport in a borrowed car, we pass Dahlia Street. I walk the perimeters of my apartment. Who beheaded my camera? Do I remember the names of all my teachers? What year was I most confident? These words I say in my head most often: magenta, faith, lilacs, Rachmaninoff, the sea. I think the prairie is only good for watching lightning bounce back to the sky. I have buried objects in the yard I do not want found. I'm trying to react to myself, above ground, to find faith in language's failures. What is okay to cultivate? Is art the only tangible object? Weather does not hold feelings of its own. Thank you.
Who remembers the blue stoop? I'm laughing at the question, who? Everybody, all the names, like an early book of the Bible. It isn't just the names, they go deep and make 3 wide steps, 3 very wide steps, and everywhere. There is Franny and Kim, Amy, Gary, and George, Dawn Ann and a red-headed brother Bobby, B.A., Matthew, Paula, and Rob, Tommy Fliss and all the Flisses, goddamn Steve Fliss, Steve smoking Fliss. Anthony's mother's leaning out the window. Does she ever go out? Yes, every day. She leans out the window all day long. Anthony's uncle played the trumpet. Everybody knows that, but when we say he played the trumpet, we mean he played with everybody. Yes, Tony Bennett, but have you ever heard of Al Martino, Guy Lombardo? People, big bands. He played with them all. And in some third floor heaven, he still is. People say, once upon a time, the call was a dime. They say more than I can say here. They say, don't forget where you're from, but I don't have to. I never left. Recently, somebody said the blue stoop looks smaller than it used to. I guess they know what they're talking about. But don't tell that to Michael, and Michael, and a generation of roses weaned on a fresh coat of swimming pool paint every few years. All the dirty kid faces that will never be clean. Those are my faces. Where's Steve Motika? This next poem is called Madison, Monk, and the Opposition Party. There's an inherited dispute no one disputes. Even if it's a fable, we agree to disagree. There was once enough agreement about disagreement to agree. In school, I pored over James Madison and Thelonious Monk on my own. Both Madison and Monk understood essential tension, the variant shapes that are X and N and O are dented shiny horns of mutual frustration, and more yet will. This, how I came to speak for myself. Now I stand among the rocks. The rocks are stony and proud in their way, blunt and mute, or partly so. Sometimes saying things like, hold me, and go, and hold me, and stay. So I go, or hold on as long as I can. The rocks are never obvious. This, their appeal. We take photographs, but they start to slide out of the picture, as the page and the slanting handwriting there is always more than its texture. These are not my reading glasses. The day passes. The rocks remain. For the moment, lunch makes a difference. Much better audio here, too. Monk is mute, and Madison is voluble on factions. I listen to both. I write this out on an oak table. Somebody made it. It is a plank I use for eating, talk, collage. The table is under it all. But I cannot circle back to it now. The work is done. Now, our turn. Now is the thing nobody doubts. The rocks are another thing. Who wants these? They are here, but they are another thing. Nobody seems to want them. So, the rocks. It's not a clear. Give us the rocks then. We're all in with the rocks. And I'm going to end with the last two poems are brother-sister poems. And the first one is the title of my book, Runaway Goat Cart. There's a cart and there's a goat and there's two kids in there. They're ferals. I think. This is an image by Bill Traylor, who's fantastic. Runaway Goat Cart. This is how the cart starts, like a bad brother and sister team, pitching up the horror. The goat cart starts like this, a stuttering path, low branches, patches of light, the lake, the woods, something like smoldering fire in the nose. It starts like gumption and bad apples, those large wheels wheeling larger, cracking forward. To fly and to die, but first to shout in the buggy air. Night of mosquitoes and mud, night of uprooted trees and glee, swooping bats, nothing left to see. They pick up speed like this. Sister says no, and brother says, no, oh no. The blind scratch of the thicket, 1, 2, 3, 4 phantoms more. The scent of tree clumps in each divot. This is how the mud-matted goat runs, its slatted eyes behind its head, afraid, outstripping her own muscle band. And those freak eyes again. This is how the goat and cart run off from each other, vaulted, bloody nose first, the scrappiest kid fighters taken out at the knees, and all the bloody parts rattling right the fuck off. This is how they nearly capsize, cleaving and clawing, pounded by forces beyond their control. Starry, starry stars, starry, starry scars, the last screech inside their non-stop stop. The cart shifts like this. Blue for night when night is black. Black if they could see and black if they couldn't. There's no keeping up. There's no way to say no more. No hell. No holy shit. No holy shit hell. If you want a story, come back tomorrow. And then but great. This is a poem that I'm reading out of bravery. I wrote it for my sister who was born with severe mental retardation, and she's my sister. But I'm reading it because someone said something like, out of love you can write with straight fury. Out of love you can write with straight fury. So this is a really short section of a 6-page poem, 2.5 pages of it. The things we string together. My book starts with a brother and sister poem, and it ends with one. And thanks for everything. You know, you're all here for the same reason I'm here. Things we string together. Familiar as a weeknight and as maddening. Pointing in the doorway. Your face hurt then. No, there's nothing out there. You only wanted what you wanted, and there was no reason not to pitch a fit. Before you stormed off, I wanted you to look at me. Before I stormed off, thoughts rankled me. When it comes to being furious, maybe we're even. Your face is kind of tough, fair, defiant. You look Irish, a bit of South Orange, that New Jersey brusque. Part with amber, part with spunk. I know we can lock in. I know we can again. We cannot know each other. But we have a thread. The humid September. God comes to see us without a bell. From a sudden hunger you step away. Jangle, follow your nose, your breath. When you dance, you don't want to dance with anyone else, except maybe Tommy Bamford or Gina Cochilla, just not with me. Sometimes you kick your feet, sometimes you spin, once. When you clap your hands, you laugh. By now, I think I know what you're going to do, but don't. But you're as predictable as anyone. You'd rather stay in, you'd rather not swim. Bowling is for suckers, but fun to hang out. Sometimes you fake tears, and so I know. And so, we're stubborn, we resent showing our hands, we can't help it. I won't call these things and bricks and things toys. Another bag. You hold the string and beads and shake. It's not manic, it's not voodoo, not superstitious. All sorts of clicks, or is it only one click? Wood block on wood, wood that listens. And this is another section inside of this. Late night TV, darkness. There's a way, I heard us say. Tommy and Colleen, our names, our household names. Each day we say is another way. That's each day's way. We can only set people right. A show with no budget, no voiceovers, an elliptical. That's not even an idea for a show. We sit, look out the window, look back in, pay per view. The night won't pass. Lonely me, lonely you. Dusk never comes. We're a sleeper hit. Back home, on the job, always working, enlisting others, looking hard at, searching through your stuff, your work, you. identifying wads of red, black, impossible to rip gray tape. It's already been taped over at least twice. The last two paragraphs. I wonder where you think I am when I'm not here, or how much you think of me at all. Your footsteps through the sleeping house, putting everything in its place, or place you find. The next day's search for your night's work, wallet, shoes, bills, all moved elsewhere. Mom, Grandmom, and Aunt Sharon all have dreams where you talk to them. I too look for your language, though I fear what you'd probably say we wouldn't want to hear, as I say nothing here of sex or all the words we put into your mouth. To me, you say nothing, and I write it down as fast as I can. Thank you.
So I'm just going to read three short sections from the title poem. It's called The Year of Yellow Butterflies, and it starts with a couple of quotes. The first is Frank Bedard. Terrible to dress in the clothes of a period that must end. And the second is John Ashbery. You must remember that certain things die out for a while so they can be remembered with affection later on. And there's some chairs up front if people in the back want to come up. I can wait a minute. Anyone want to move up? All right. It was the year young women wore blue jeans with carefully ripped holes revealing leggings, and in the knees of the leggings, little rips, glimpses of neon paisley tights. In the paisley tights, there were holes, and through these holes, we could see little patches of perfect skin-colored knee makeup. In the knee makeup, there would always be a gap where the real skin would peek out, and in that gap would be another hole, and in it a surgically implanted transparent window revealing veins. And under the veins, there would be muscles, predictable bones. Inside those bones, we could see little tubes, and inside those tubes, there was the beginning or the end of language. I didn't know which, but I knew it was a kind of happiness, like a crooked line is happy, or like a million crooked lines are even happier. I thought of it as a great yellow swooping, maybe the music of glaciers melting, or mislaid planets slowly readjusting their orbits. It was the year everyone kept forgetting their babies on the conveyor belt. You'd pay the stork for it, then leave it right there, not noticing that it was wailing for breast milk for the past. So many people forgot their babies that year, they needed to open baby libraries across the country. You could check out other people's if you lost track of your own. I never bought a baby or even wanted to borrow one, but I like to go to the baby library at my lunch break. Under the mounds of congealing drool, I could finally remember my own lost babyhood. How blurry it was, how loud. It was the year no one could tell the difference between a poem and a resume, a resume and a poem. I was awarded a job as a poet in residence at an insurgent branding firm. I wrote odes to the CEO on my cell phone and emailed guzzles to the VP. I loved the job because it included a free lunch with a salad bar and unlimited kale-flavored hummus. In each poem I wrote for the job, there was another secret poem embedded in the first, invisible unless one touched it. I was willing to let anybody touch it. All I wanted in exchange was a goddamn kiss.
Photographs with images of my father as a good babu. He stands there dormant-like below the eaves, my portly neighbor with his umbrella. The sky pelts him with rain as he squints at me, stranded on our soggy porch. My neighbor's a geologist looking for faults, penciling leases, till, and talus. A happy fat man when it comes to rocks. Elsewhere, brothers stand side by side, feet cut off in the photograph. My neighbor's a bald millionaire, larger than Browne. Recalling my father's black umbrella, faithful civil servant, a good baboon. Photographs with images of my father as a pantoum. By day, a bamboo cane, by night, the sea. I give you back the scent of bitter oranges. You were someone else, if that is possible. My father younger than I am today. I give you back the scent of bitter oranges, blue cocktail in a tumbler. Your other self, my father, younger than I am today. Riddle me this, deep blue sea in your hand, blue cocktail in a tumbler, your other self unfurling the bamboo mat for your bed. Riddle me this, deep blue sea in your hand, have you forgotten your favorite riddle? Unfurling the bamboo mat for your bed, you were someone else, if that's possible. Have you forgotten your favorite riddle? By day, a bamboo cane, by night, the sea. Photographs with images of my father as a Sputnik sweetheart. I was born, so to speak, under a Soviet natal star. Mother with managerial schemes, was a cashier. Father flashed the badge at Junior Federale. A smarmy nest they built for us, then worked all day. My small delights were my latchkey and color TV. Got no business pimping my origins, you'd say. After all, mine's original as a Betty Crocker cake. Father kept a mistress, common coin for his class. Ever see your mama catch your papa on the neck? When I moved out, they grew seasick with marital bliss. Mother manning the stern and steadying the oar. Father in front of the tube, a pale-lit falling star. Photographs with images of my father as a lullaby. How strange the power of recall, my father remembering 1918 at the Safeway parking lot, but not the thing he came there for. Let him remember what is distant and unimportant, Mindanao and his father's wounding from the Moro's blade slicing his left shoulder. I exhale a cloud of smoke and conjure my grandfather in his room where anger was fat as church litanies, a room blue with his pajamas and the smell of piss and Vicks Vapor Rub. I am that achy stink of cigar plume that scratches my throat, coughs that wake me in the middle of night. Then a snowstorm blew across our town. Even doctors and nurses were calling in sick. Vernal equinoxes all choked in winter stuff. My father wades through his complacency, a living ghost returning to the scene of battle. Cradled in fog, adrift in suburban lullabies, that familiar locution for heaven. Photographs with images of my father as a peony. Here's to the peony in Edna St. Vincent's garden. The head's repose too heavy for its shoulders. Here's to repose whose half-sister is Dolor, Dolor who hates to be called Dolores. Here's to the song De Colores, sung on my father's religious retreat. Here's to solitude and surrender in order to cleanse the soul before returning to the body. Here's to the body that is my mother's lips, kissing my bad old dad bowed like a peony. Which brings us back to the humble peony who corresponds in unnecessary postcards like his first cousin, the Lord. Photographs with images of my father on the 4th of July. It was a sidelong glance through the fissure, the errors, the mangled tassel some mistook for wrought devices I had gathered, or memories one kept in cigar boxes. Father, hardly flexing joint or muscle, managed only a labored turn, turning tight his neck of crinkled chamois, moistened for car washing and wringing dry. Doubtless that tired chorus was sung, sounded dirge-like for mother's 80th happy day, though we dragged the notes with listened smiles, hatless heads, while cameras snapped like fireworks in the distance, small puffs of light. And my mind wandered back to what John Ashbery once said about Miss Moore, the tricorn-hatted poet, who gives us the feeling that life is softly exploding around us, though around us are only shadows. There in the arid gray underneath a door frame, father bent as an ampersand, in press pants and polo, being and not being, whose steps cancel each other out, just as the traveler's destination is only one part of the journey, or that well is always empty except for the hollow sound it contains, which is more drink to the soul than to the parched mouth of my father, whose pose registers neither salutation nor surprise. Thank you.
Maxine doesn't only love men's bodies. She wants to grasp the logic of their internal organs. She craves blueprints, circuit diagrams, sewing patterns. First time she saw Frankenstein, she wasn't afraid. She wanted to know how the mad doctor did it, where to get dead people parts, which graves were best for culling, whether a whole family of ladybugs could live inside those zombie bellies. When the high school guidance counselor asked the inevitable career question, she told her all she really cared about was weaving back and forth between the inner and outer life of people, what you could see, what you couldn't, writing down what she found there, taking ideas apart and putting them back together to make them more ecstatic. So you want to be a mechanic? In a way, she said, and left it at that. Every winter solstice, she watches surgery shows, goes to butcher shops, rethinks people as composites, disparate shards blazed together by sheer will. She has only to say unravel, and her body will unwind before her, unfurl like a curled hair, come undone after the ravage. So much about negative space can you learn from snow angels, how she imprints slush with the shape of where she was and where she wasn't. To dissolve the distinction between inside and outside, take a wrecking ball to a building. Where do things go after they're unmade? Failed marriages, the minds of the dead, old cells after replication. Is there a holding place for disappeared things where people can reclaim everything, from nail clippings to abandoned children? Because she can't stand the thought of her love vanishing, she keeps all her old boyfriends in a mason jar by the porch swing. This is best done in leather. Remembering is best done in leather, on the back of a motorcycle. Maxine can still see him in a bowler hat winking. He knew she couldn't get enough. Her memories are tangled cords. Someday she will make a robe out of them and capture something wonderful. Stop being a live wire, a maker of trouble, a hidden fox. Come and find her, or maybe she is better left unfound. With her mind of running cattle and backward time travel, she's starting to suspect she wasn't made for these days that live so far from the edge. Teach her all you have seen, caresser of fishwomen, only listener to the siren song, survive. Tell her about the giants, because she knows they exist, and she's sick as hell of being lied to. This last one is from the final poem, when she decided she wants to have a baby, called Making Maxine's Baby. It's the last one. It makes sense that after 29 years of feeling the urge to take the man who plays invisible drums on 145th Street into her kangaroo pouch, Maxine should finally be fighting to get someone to live inside her, besides her imaginary friends who have survived into adulthood, even on her bad diet and aversion to sleep. So many hours not creating a damn thing is just plain lily-livered, as John Wayne or her mother would say. Dear baby, some notes on the future. Drink lots of water, only trust lefties and fortune tellers. When you start imagining things like giant cockroaches dancing behind people who are screaming, don't worry, it runs in the family. And please don't ever be mean to your father. He will always remove your crusts for you. Though you haven't been planted yet, I've started gossiping with you about the mole people, hallucinating a future Maxine crippled with feeling, and how your father will tell you knock-knock jokes while you're still basically a fish. Rest his head on my belly, listen for your crackle. Do that thing, give me that look that says he would battle many windmills for me. Do that thing with his heart, where it beats outside his body like a cartoon man. Thank you so much.
The paper father. What if I were a father and all my children were vomiting paper? Would I write a poem on their paper? Or would I take them in for an x-ray, and would the doctor suspect me of negligence? Would he call child services? Would I need to kill the doctor to save my children? Would I have to torch the hospital and kidnap the nurses? What if the children liked their vomit paper? What if they tried to live with it, kept it in boxes under the bed, colored it, and cut circles and squares out of it? What if I were the father of 1 million particles of paper? What if I inseminated a paper mill and the whole valley were flooded in a papery pulp? What if I drank the pulp? What if it stimulated my serotonins? Would I be able to sleep under a blanket of pulp? What if when I woke up a dove flew out of my mouth? What if I captured the dove and sewed him into the quilt? What if I covered my children with the quilt? Would they stay warm? Would they dream of the papery dove? Would they know the dove was their father flying through their heads? The stop sign. I gulp for air, but I have swallowed a stop sign. My chest cavity expands, my rib cage swells. There is a stop sign in my lungs, and its essence enters my blood. My heart throbs with inhibition. And when I exhale, the stop sign spreads its white-tipped wings into the air. It is more potent than any contagion. I'll be quarantined in a glass box where I'll have to wear a plastic stop sign over my face. The new polyethylene compounds will plug up my nose, and I'll be tortured with a flaming stop sign. They'll hold it over my mouth until my gums vibrate and my teeth melt. They'll tape my eyes shut so I can see only one indivisible stop sign hovering over the planet with liberty and justice for all. They'll lob stop sign bombs down on any detractors, but for now I type a text message and it is a stop sign. I pick up my son and he is a stop sign. I call my parents and they tell me the yard is a swamp of octagons. Father can't go to work because a stop sign spewed red acid on all the machines. I pack up to leave the city, but the drawbridge is clogged with stop signs. A feather takes flight from beneath my boot. Even the dead bird was a stop sign. The sparrow's nest. Within my shadow lives a colder shadow, one devoid of vision or form, a dark fountain which reflects my face. And within that face is another face, 2 eyes, a tongue, a constellation I call my son, an entity that jibber-jabbers into my hearing aid, a vehicle that inroads to the greater hive. And within that hive is a dark maze of chambers housing more sons and daughters and mahogany bureaus and pleated accordion drapes. Behind the drapes are my daughter's daughters who carry worms from the garden and sing or belch. Soon they'll give birth and I'll wash my hands before holding the baby. Beneath the soap dish is the shadow soap dish, the oil, the grime, the slippery outline that haunts the soap. And inside the slippery outline, I exhaust my homilies at home, within the shady leaves. Last poem, thank you to Joe, Paula, all the organizers. The refrain. The light gray bird flies across the fence. It flummoxes the squirrel and cordons off the yard. It flies into the office and enters the sentence I was writing about a bird that lacks clear ambition but understands the glimmer of the pen because its eyes are made of needles. The bird upchucks a fetus because, like all birds, its body is pain's whistling vehicle. It shimmers on the bookshelf, whistles a fight song, and pecks at the forefathers' portraits before building a nest with their radioactive scraps. What is it thinking? What does it want? Can it hatch offspring in this fucked up sludge fest? What is the bird's mood? Is it an apricot, masculine, feminine, feminine, masculine, militant fruit, fiery fruit, bursting flesh, a fire opening in the sun, a sun burning a creche? Where can it leave its brood? When the bird flies back to the window becomes its song, and its nest and its throat of blood. It launches a neighborhood protection program, and from the rosebush assembles the man of thorns, a big cop whose head is congested, so he pistol whips himself until the enhanced interrogation launches his brain into the sky, where the bloody pieces become a droning swarm, blocking out the moonlight, bloodying the sunlight, drowning the bird songs, clogging the throats, clustering around the gray bird and ushering its clusters to the squad car, the cash nest, the broken, unlit cradle.
What Vincent saw on 30th Street. Plush boxes. Never even thought to look down the street to the river. A lawn is so rare in New York City. Loudspeaker next to plastic pint glass filled with butts. Rage soaring, high priest, madness roiled, saw her coming. Bright lips, tattered stockings, tight skirt. Patch of cloth. A nice fat one this morning. Many did not freak. Priestess hunkering over me. Distortion pressed, dark threaded stare. X mars the spot. Sped up kissing. Insisted she write a pulsing from there, and she would, continuing. The dull throb rang in their eye. Fat window sucked in by pipes. Rain eyeing fat buttocks. A pale hint of memory. Harmony doubled as nasal hump of the whale wheezing. Sister and sister. Slick wagon. Foreboding memory. Hunger peck. Rye antidote. America. I have love of the outcast. We don't look up at what we're looking at. Flashes of SUV and 4WD in reflective glass, perfectly registered there, in color and style. Shiny red garbage, iced tea, sunglass on wood table, an arresting lull. Ice water and ice green tea, yellow and green. A mixed heritage, too loud music, and then changes. When someone comes to face you ultimately, to understand, Someone spreading toward you, that is poetry. You fix on that. The end is near. Therefore, lie on grass in park as day recedes, sleep or wait for love. Coffee in a glass, light foam tiles, round on floor, square on wall, gold, turquoise, jade, old photographs in metal frames, concrete slab, steel, the shafts rising over water. This one is called An Openness. It's dedicated to Norma Cole. An openness, space among walkers in the square, an old-time cigarette, a body selling, talking, a limitation, but also possibility. He just wants to be in the circus. Could it be reckless to be a poet, and could that be one's salvation? I have a weakness. A weakness is also a strength. That's a dangerous moment for a person. I like the movement, the way you can buy a coffee and 2 minutes later you were drinking it while speeding to another destination. And you can talk to people and be pleasant to them, and then there is this light. I want to hear the world. You stay in one position, and then you move to another position. The times make us what we are. I was looking at her differently. That's how people accumulate power. They draw it to themselves. That knowledge burns, that piece of clothing exposed. So many haircuts. Makes you want to go to the movies. Many people sit at tables. You can order a decaffeinated coffee. I track fashion for a living. That guy's haircut's pretty good. I wish I had a uniform to keep the day intact. It's now or never. I take on the mantle. I come up to the point. Then I can relax. And finally, this one, a quick dip. Whatever pulls shift one this way and that, to be based in meetings, one can be, and there life is shifting, but in the present, all is what is, and that is timeless, as though blessed. The moments in quiet, country, middle of the night, calm, as though far at sea. Lives one has built only through love, passageways, continuities. Love continues, even when oneself cannot. Each moment now is present, and it stays. There is solidity to this. It is just being able to be here. And if everything is changing, okay. You try to stay in the country, but city has its poles as well. But here in country, light is more ample, able to cover, bathing the scene. Earth accepts, sidewalk refracts terribly. We get used to it, our bodies get crumpled, the mind constantly exercised. There is no limit to the stimulation or to the working out of ideas, style. You look out and see two people embracing. Thank you.
Tree-lined and transatlantic, I was impatient earth for cataclysmic feats, to reckon with the reckless behavior, my feet on the train seat. The mind obsesses on teleology, how it will end and for what sake. Tremor and flood, ascension, one last smoke. Beneath the green leaf awning, the night's cracked plaster, the hereafter. To live rejoicing and true-footed, a common prayer. Place your all you ever wanted into me. I was nervous about the TV thing, but now that I'm here, it feels strangely familiar. My dad worked in a TV station when I was a child. He was the production, he was in charge of local commercials. So I spent a lot of time in the studio. It felt just like this. And he did a lot of commercials, a lot of local commercials. I was the Burgermeister. My brother and I had to eat the burgers, and he did a mattress commercial, and we got to bounce on the beds in the mattress store. The second poem is called Coffin Bone. The loom inside a horse, the engine that drives thrashing on great slabs of neck. Anger at God is not God. The Appaloosa is refusing to cross thresholds, neither in nor out, as dementia is a dethroned king. Comes trouble, gives up in the field. Why, I confess to his peaceful head flat to grass. If the mud elongates the tendon, the coffin bone will stride through the hoof. A constellation traverses the horseshoe meadow. The insects are a cacophony of amity. Will rope you to a tractor and pull.
Run, he said, by which he meant something else entirely. Bite down, perhaps, or buck up. It was impossible to internalize with any degree of confidence. Bite down, he repeated, unable to stop, foaming at the mouth, meaning to imply something about the government, the nature of privacy, and metaphysics in an intertextual world. Ever the sport at this last suggestion, she blenched. Rashly, perhaps, she threw her baby down the emergency chute, optimistic it would bring him to a better place. All this discursus interruptus is killing me, she screamed, by which she meant, hold me, reach inside, and paddle what you find until it unfurls and offers a meaningful alternative. These first two I'm reading for are from a small little collection that's out there on the table called State of the Union. This is not a movie. This is not a movie, but now and then it feels like one and often has the same symptoms. With this overload of blurred identities, it may be advisable to drag our feet through the conceptual mud, a necessity devoutly to be resisted. Unless it's preferable to jump ship and sink on our merits like grief-stricken elephants. Which is not to say you shouldn't arrive at your reunion prepared with garters, buckshot, and dungarees in case the situation goes south and you're feeling peckish. The man in the moon may bring his husband. As acolytes, they are dry, sometimes even down in the mouth, but never dead in the water. Come to mama is what they might think if they weren't too worn and weathered to fall for anything an order of magnitude more inviting than this insidiously tempting razor's edge. This is from a new manuscript. Simplicity. Simplicity, she said, had been her maiden name. Now she went by Runway. Church bells echoed the journal planted beneath her grave, cataloging the curvature of tree roots. There was cartilage between her ears, same as everyone's, although hers felt velvety and Caribbean. Sex was still her favorite flavor, although its colors tracked the siren song of her menagerie. How much she wished she'd known before her synapses popped out of superposition. The modus operandi of the domineering minnow, the hierarchical algorithm of eye contact, how to inoculate attention, the culinary calculus of lava, not to mention the Rosetta Code of size, how to demilitarize curiosity, the distillation density of here minus there, or the power of moths to unite the genders. And what about the best concealer for a sagging ego or a flyaway mind? But by this time, her fingers were golden paddles, and her prow could only point upstream. This last poem is called Dig. Dig is all you ever say, and I do, becoming ever grimier and less enlightened. If only I had a daughter, she would no doubt cheer me on. She would have good faith and long eyelashes, perhaps even a tiny butterfly tattooed beside the corner of her coy little mouth. I don't know this, I'm just saying. Did, you reiterate, which revives my surprise that you have nothing else to do. In the past, I've asked for justifications, or at the very least, suggestions, but answer came there none. I have asked for reassurance, a caress, or even the briefest wing. I've asked for a daughter, either plain or tattooed. Once, during our third or fourth eclipse, I thought you might speak. I wouldn't mind any of it if only you would tell me where to look. I have burrowed, you see, in every possible direction. So far, I have unearthed no secret treasure, no new perspective, no offspring of any kind, not even the slightest touch of your still unsullied, impossibly smooth, irresistibly trembling hand. Thank you.
We meet back at our hotel room at noon to head to the Basilica of St. Francis. I see one of the hotel's attendants in dark glasses. She takes off her glasses for a second to make eye contact, and her large eyes bug out from a thyroid problem. I suppress my reaction. Out on the street, we only hear birds that sound particularly sonic and sing in Italian. Oh, do you remember that guy who spoke our language, who understood us, our birds' existences? Color is the way here. Leaves are changing red, yellow, and lime green into butterflies. We pass by a dollar change store, go in and come out different. Really, the birds are singing in Italian or another more ancient language. Each building's chimney is a miniature minaret. The skies darken and the clouds gather, then rain pours down on Assisi, changing the leaves to brighter red and yellow and lime green. Flocks of blue jays and cardinals make figure eights in the sky, then land in the upper branches of a tall pine tree. We see others on the whetstone streets. I assume they march on their way to or from the Basilica of St. Francis. Because of the rain, I get to study their faces moving by, some with exaggerated features with much space between their eyes or between their eyebrows to the edge of jaw, or jowl to nose, comic or comic tragic. The rain gives illusion of a veil or a hiding place, and so that they relax their masks of daily life, which drop off for a glimpse underneath to reveal all of their hidden feelings. Sorrows, fears, and regrets are made visible today. Too many faces. I'm old enough to recognize kindness in the face, such as in Maggie's, that just opens up wider and more beautiful when the rain drops off the tip of her nose and dampens her peach fuzz cheeks. We slip down through the gray stone streets, catching occasional views of the valley. After a mile of thin roads on an incline, the road tilts upwards, and we finally arrive at the tomb and Basilica of San Francisco, built in 1228. After many stairs, we find our way inside. A mass is in progress in one far corner, where attendees croon in untrained voices. I smell a rain-soaked lamb's wool, honey, old leather, saddles, frankincense, and priest's butts. In the dark, psychedelic columns snake around, and none like the other. The base of one column is held up by a shiny sculpted marble hand holding the corner of the column. I lose track of what is wall and what is high ceiling. I stumble from alcove to alcove, taking cues only from a thin veneer of dull late afternoon light. I find a small wood sign that points to a staircase of pounded stone that leads downstairs to St. Francis's tomb beyond a smaller room with 2 rows of pews. We take the aisle down the middle that leads to the shrine lit by candlelight with space around to circumnavigate the tomb. I step closer to the shrine and feel an invisible ray of light that lands on the top of my head and into my third eye, St. Francis's presence. My throat is tight. I want to cry a lot, but I only let out a little sigh. The squeaky feet of tourists and seekers distract me. One large group from China is rushed through in an old communist blockway to get to there's 2 seconds in the presence of St. Francis's tomb. A French-speaking tour guide transmits to headsets on a group of roaming elderly folks. I overhear her say in English, "The basement tomb doubles as a bomb shelter." Some of the elderly linger and cut into the stream of people from China who look around with blank faces that silently ask, "What's this Italian opiate of the people? I don't feel a thing." I go to find a seat and almost drop down in front of a person with an eye patch sitting in the left row benches. But I hear her thoughts. "Now you are going to block my only view." Thoughts tick louder than words around St. Francis's tomb. I step out of her way and pick a seat behind a nun on the right side. Maggie swings in to sit beside me and we meditate. After sitting here for hours, I become part of the site. I think, relax, uterus, think with your body, deal with your brain. I think all of my aches and pains are from stress. In a flash, I see Faye the cat with St. Francis, who is the patron saint of animals. I almost forgot. I pray silently, weighed down by the searing pain from the severed life of Faye, the cat. I also think about my mom's sorrow and suffering over Dad's suffering. Let this sorrow keep my heart open forever.
Thank you. To feel a presence, they say, can be like a haunting. You are yourself and no other physical being is there, yet a feeling or sensation emerges as if from nowhere. Like the negress. The black female body not in repose, instead walking or clickety-clack. It knocks at the door, which is the surface of existence, or in life it walks down the street and is asked to assume a position of slackness in response to the perception of being in perpetual heat. What would we do without her? How would we know ourselves? Indeed, we need something against which the pristine can manifest itself, can create its artifice of pristineness. To be unadorned or unclothed, light bursts. Glare from fluorescent mouths breathe their profit into me. No one hears the glass sound of breath, just me. Was, quote, low, they say, quote, fastened in place by violence, was, quote, ritualized, was, quote, debased, was, quote, grotesque, was, quote, black flesh, or, quote, suave, and, quote, blackness, and, quote, finality was, and, quote, nature was, quote, sensualized. In standing repose, the object lures us into the belief that she is indeed human. We know this from her sun-draped eyes, her capacity for deceit. We see no absolute proof, however, against the artist's outstretched offering, the Mammy Trophy and the, quote, fantastic Al Jolson performing his signature tune. Enter machines and abstractions, zip. Automations to lengthen legs, round edges, plump buttocks, relational fish, irrational fissure. All this shimmery ache in one place, suddenly against your back. My body aflame with it, can't you see? Make an outline around my form, use your chisel. I will indulge your every little fit. I, your perfect muse, your blank blank, your everything, also your nothing. Insofar as the phrase, quote, black woman, replace outside of domestic, quote, power. I lie down in the ditch myself, stretch my body alongside the dead myself. Outside the frame, oblique lover, decooning maybe as a young beauty. His hand reaches in to retrieve me and pets me, my nakedness, a fine scratch. Filament traces in the historical body. Representation falls away. Chokehold, quote, blackness, swallowed, quote, brown, your, quote, black father, whose, quote, blackness precedes him, stumble in laborious, quote, black gait toward, quote, absence, cross your, quote, black hands into your, quote, black pockets, hold your, quote, poor, quote, black baby against a, quote, brick, quote, wall as instructed, and the, quote, niggers get, quote, sold up the, quote, river against a, quote, light, quote, white, quote, fluff. You wail a mimic mouth into beaded rhythms of usness, fragrance of a cosmos where roads are not partitioned, no roads, no marks to mark up the whole big wide world, the holes of the universes untethered from time. In absence of wholeness, catch glimpses of the sides of cells. If we could be without him, we would. Is there any country without him? We are told of the reservoirs, that they are without sea or wind, that we attach laconic, swerve and hold what has happened there, trauma sack. What strikes me, she says, is how easy it is to commit atrocities. Remove from experience, rain, unnurture the physical form. A girl is just a girl, one ass cheek on a full chair, balancing. Remove skin, water, sunlight, love, position the neck, so that landscape dissolves into black wall, excise language puffs from pharynx. Unfurl the scroll. Hear ye, hear ye. Thank you.
Jack Snipe in stick shadow, light failing to show against light, dark against dark. When wide-eyed in oaks, I praise the sun's power to pervert a basic reality. I pass from nakedness into pattern. A copperhead waits in dry, matted leaves. Its black and tan cross bands in conflict have canceled out boundaries of form. Effacement proceeds under circumstances wherein effacement serves the wearer. Hover, Thayer, disgraced father of camouflage. Our animals have dismantled their silhouettes, but I'll stare at this oak canopy while your outline reappears. The crown of a chickadee at nest hole just merged with the dark beyond. Maturity in the age of hazard is learning to play dead. A flounder hatches with one eye on each side of her midline. It's the waning of trust that drives our survival. Of the perceptive senses available to the enemy, sight is by far the most useful. In the cycle of life, one of her eyes migrates over the dorsum to join the other. A commando in formation, the juvenile conceals herself by appearing to be pebbles. The underside of every canvas is white. In aquamarine sky, a predator drone floats by. In the beginning was crypsis. This is cubism, Picasso said about camouflage. We did this. Like a duck cut out of disruptively patterned paper and held up to phosphorus white sky, for Halloween I wanted to be the embarrassment felt by the background when it fails to assimilate the mark. I fashioned a ghillie suit from jute twine and stained burlap strips affixed to a poncho. I stepped out of my outline into the three-dimensional breakup of the neighborhood, assuming I'd disappear into wind passing through sawgrass. not be taken against asphalt for sniper or Wookiee. Not a word of this is true in the way you'd like it to be, but poetry wears a ghillie suit that from a certain distance looks deceptively like a lie. Conscripted Fauvist, exposed impressionist gunner whose battery was hit, adolescent portraitist in the corner thumbing through Thayer for ideas. Their need to deceive eyes in the sky assembles the camoufleurs in Amiens. Paint fumes in hierarchy. No difference between aesthetic ambition and duty to country. What that is personal, not structural, can we possibly glean from this? A tarpaulin ringed with islets and dyed in mustard dries on the line. The Inspector General dips capes in a vat of greens to be donned by artillerymen over bird blue uniforms. All the biceps in the room are laced by red and white brassards, embroidered in wire, depicting a silver chameleon. To fully embody an art requires disembodiment. Warhol's final work was self-portrait in camouflage. Floating in a lake of black ink, his pallid Polaroid head is silk-screened militaristic olive, black, and gray in woodland pattern. He glares through the forest of color directly at the viewer, as if to play on the platitude that we will exit just as we came. Across his boyhood skin, the side effects of starlit fever once spread blotted splotches of pigment in woodland pattern. Portraiture demands interiority. Camo is soul in surface. The legacy lies in reproducibility. And I'll finish with this. Chinese wear sky cloud pattern. Saudis wear arid brush stroke. Spanish wear the Sahara variant. Cambodian para-commandos wear the bleeding vines. Nigerians wear Chinese Type 99 four-color oceanic. Armenians wear Hellenic lizard. Germans wear fleck tarn. Egyptians wear rocks and sand reversible or the scrambled egg. Cubans wear elm leaf. Vietnamese wear the Commonwealth's denizen smock. Bulgarians wear squiggle splinter. Italians, desert vegetado. Russians wear amoeba. Koreans wear tiger stripe. Iraqis, Afghans, and Americans all wear the U.S. woodland pattern. Thanks.
This poem is about the last time I was at AWP, and it has the clever title of The Awful Wee Party. Get it? 1. Outside reasons, i.e. I was horny, began to assemble the arbitrary pace of asses into a reverse order that determined the order of who would be doing it with whom, i.e. student nurses and sorority girls, in an embellished dentist office behind the tiki bar, while old leftists secretly peeped through peepholes roasting in their own B.O. What is this? The guy in the elevator said, smelling his finger. I wondered. 2. Okay, I was loose, floundering even, a drifting archipelago of estrogen and cigarettes in the glow of the southern erotic gardens. Okay, there were no gardens, just a vast array of sailors, luminous in the glow of the tiki bar's wet t-shirt contest. Okay, it was a sonnet competition. They called me anti-intellectual, to which I replied, smiling, democracy is the new Christianity. The one priest in attendance evinced a grimace, and I showed him my little Keith Richard. Okay, it was my vibrating sailboat. And these next two are from the Bloof book, which is called Greetings from My Girly Leisure Place. And I was asked by Bourgeois magazine, is that how it's pronounced? I never know if I'm doing this right, to contribute to an anthology called Relentless by Jeff Bezos, where all the poems are written by Jeff Bezos, even though they were written by us. So I did a mashup of anagrams for his name, which is Jeffrey Preston Bezos, and I mashed it up with Jubilate Año by Christopher Smart. There is authority in my frozen frosty by Jeff Bezos. There is authority in my frozen frosty. There is irony in my bee frenzy. And once the blood grape raises my refrozen beef, there will be envy in my strep joy. There are mute fish in my fop notes. There are dark presets in my Celexa. There is a befriended Joey zone in my breezy ferns. My fez boasts a beer sty. A bent ebony jester translates my charity as I probe a soft fry inside the womb of Sarah. In my hour of felicity, I came upon a poser calf's waggery, preening a sporty Bafo repose. I should have availed myself of the poser calf's waggery, but My Little Pony toffied my Fonzie. I should have translated charity into the shadows of death, but God's porny ozone presented some deep, face-spent Jesus prose tropes. There is a zesty pig mister in my entropy Tony. There is an entropy Tony in my obese butt homie. My obese butt homie translates Steve Jobs into surf tranny Ralphing. My tranny surfs Ralph a mean foyer spore. And so I bless my Zen goat as he pestos the vine. I bless hookering for Jesus without having to go to Italy or France. I rejoice like a Moabite worm at Best New Jersey Pet Off 2013. For my jonesing is a jewel as pure and transparent as the name and number of stars. And this is When the Moon Turned Away. I looked at the moon and the moon turned away. I looked at the moon on the water and the water turned away. At least it should have been the moon or the water, but those shapes on the water were just the land masses of Asia turning away. I looked below me and the grasses looked up afraid in a sick green light at the moon which turned away. There's a cat hair on my paper. The moon was too small anyway to give much light. Maybe it was sorry for hitting me that time. Maybe it was sorry that I turned away. Maybe it never saw the pain that made me turn away. I was a moon once too, a singing moon, a bright smiling moon with a baby truth, a white seesaw baby bouncing up and down. Look up, all of you, look up. Come on, look up, because I am still the moon and beautiful in the rearview mirror, like a woman, not salt-bound, not sad, not a ghost caught crying, at least not that.
And so, just get jumping into it. I want you to say Spanish things to me, to feel that weight drip into the space between our lips. If I told you about my own biology, I'd tell you that my heart is so big, it's got 36 chambers, it's fucking Wu-Tang. Listen to my heart, my heartbeat, and you will hear only my breath. Wu-Tang, Wu-Tang, Wu-Tang. It says, here's the deal. I don't go to cemeteries to pray for those I've lost, no. I go because I'm a big fan of introducing myself to everyone. Hola, I say, soy un hombre llamado Bejota Amor. I try to do my best like Spanish. I'm really bad at Spanish, but I figure deep voices kind of sell those things. This next one is a poem about my dog. You guys have dogs? Everybody love dogs? I love dogs. I love my dog. And specifically, I love my dog. My hair is mostly wasp nests, my wasp mostly heat lightning. This is my spiritual awakening. This is my real bustle, my bustling about. My dog has many names. My dog makes me proud. What isn't sacred when the pockets of your favorite blue pants are full of real and still red flowers? I mean, I believe my dog is sacred. All his names are sacred. Ask anybody and they will tell you that the last thing they think about before they die of hypothermia is my dog. So this got me thinking of small gifts to celebrate the death moment. I settled on strapping 1,000,000 LED headlamps into the 1,000,000 spinning heads of owls, like a lighthouse We give our prey something to walk into, a kind of heaven to guide them home. Of course by home I mean mouth. Of course by mouth I mean kisses. Of course by kisses I mean swarm. Of course these are just a few of the names I have given my dog. Seriously, he's perfect. He's a vision. Thank you.
In your landscapes we drown, or are stuck between layers of earth. Here is a film of crude oil on the ocean, and the beach is cake icing, or snow near to melting. We are content to be taken in by your rectangular sun, the misshapen god of our fathers. The butterfly's body is also a urinal cake, with antenna and legs braided into a rope. Black line, what separates our species from the encroaching sky, and why again is there a spot of red on its brow? There are 1,000 places I would rather be, and I've left them all to be here. And I'm going to read a couple poems from a new series that I'm working on. My breath is an angle of worms. I died in the kitchen while looking for something luminous. In the refrigerator, a mess of wires behind the wall, someone else's ghost. I meant angel, my breath. I meant words spill from my mouth like a fog, and luminous I meant, the glow that comes from a swamp in which a craft has landed. Witchcraft I meant. Witchcraft has laundered my shirts, are so very bright. When I put them around my torso, it glows like a swamp. In the air around me, a mist of invisible objects breathed so much opportunity, like the slowness of death. A mist, I meant, of nanotubes. There's no time anymore, nor was there ever. The road is alive and intelligent. My favorite band asleep in the clapboard, a tick. I couldn't make this shit up on drugs. The NSA is a kind of bank. My nose itches when someone insipid reads my email. Nothing is safe. Your chicken salad in the company fridge. My plans to become a Hindu. Check under the tempeh. If you're reading this, I'm all ready. My brother played baseball in high school. I got him so high, the haystack bulged right there in the living room. A dove flew out of its melon. The things we've done for each other. I left once the key under a cap on the roof of his skull. A fly dove out. I meant a drove of flies in its melon. It twisted off, the coronation fizzled like a whelp. It exploded like 10,000 bees. In the kitchen, carbonation. I meant carbo loading. It used to be Atkins, meat was the godhead, and now gluten in droves, they flyer the fences. The candor has flown the coop. Its eggs are soft from DMT. I meant condor, I meant co-op, I meant DDT. What a disaster Rome wasn't studied in 10,000 glass eyes. The candle was lit at both vents from the earth like a red soup. I've burned out the eyes. Light bulbs communicate something terrible to the night. We can end you, they say. There's a room outside of this room. It's the room we're both in. You with your screen and me with my screen. I can feel you in there, inside me. Can you feel me inside you? Remember those animals from school? They had little feet. They wore googly eyes, tiny dyed cotton fuzzballs. Their job was to make us insane about money. Someone put a kid in a box full of air, and hundreds of dollars cascaded around them like smoke. You sold the most trinkets. Your zipper became a zoo. Those colorful critters whispered to each other. They made you so popular, their feet were adhesive. I didn't care enough about them. I thought they were dead. Thank you.
In this version, they shoot the white kid first. I'm taken to a small but comfortable house on the verge of two landscapes, perhaps a forest and a shore, where citizens were a symbol of the void stitched to their chests and long black gloves invisible at night. An old man whose losses were complete instructs me in the disciplines of a classical education. The crowd gathering at the window breaks apart, an emotional grenade. The more dumbfounded dropped into themselves, sinking on the forest floor like canvas tents. Untouched by abuse, unfettered by common friendships, I deploy squadrons of language to various cities to establish fealties, taxations, awards, and grants. In these far reaches, townspeople wonder after the identity of the figure who has accorded them new emotional territories, asking in return only modest remuneration, books, whiskey, pizza. Yet their mouths widen and grow into black silhouettes of their heads and disappear, eaten by their sunless throats. Now they hovered, pirouetting slowly as if on pikes, carousels swelling in size or perhaps only deepening in color, blooming canisters of gas not unspent. In costume rags and rich with easy grief, a nothing, nothing but a thought, pacing in open air, a scallion in hexahedral color conveyed toward the prescient book, toward a spine of infinite regress, tall as an uncrowned palm, natural light, silver and diffuse, an early afternoon in California. There are the water tanks. There's a skateboard in ivy. There's a house I've never seen with its driveway going behind a fence. There's a broken white rain gutter spanning the row of uncovered trash cans. There's a dirt lot with haphazard BMX jumps eroded into pebbled mounds and hollows behind the row of shaggy, rotting eucalyptus. There is the owl I once thought was a pole-mounted single-phase transformer. There is the trailer behind the chain link next to the other trailer. There is the song that was playing when their car caught fire. There they are spitting out of their overalls, cool and white. There is the driveway paved with synthetic river stones, and the planter's box of geraniums where the pine tree used to be. There's the cinder block wall I mortared when they went to the beach. There's my first bicycle. There's my mother. There is the coyote, red as cinnabar and tall as a Shetland pony, cresting over the wall into the flood canal. My brother has been sent away. No one else is home. I take the boxes that are already in the driveway and put them in the car. I can feel the drugs wearing off. There is someone in the passenger seat wearing a shirt with my name across the back. I drive to the end of the block, put the transmission in park. There are cars speeding down the hill and more climbing it. Here I go. Thank you.
Van Cake. Do you ever, don't you want, do you experience difficulty in, were you traumatized by, are you sure this is not the result of, why don't you have a, are you on the spectrum of, is this a choice or, how can you live without? Little Duchess Bake Shop, Petite Praline Sweet Spot, Red Velvet Forest Frost, Vanilla Pudding Muffin Stud, Gilded Chocolate Cherry Bunt. This year's fundraiser cake contest will celebrate the birth of our 5,000th baby. For the first time in the event's history, moving parts will be a component of decorated cakes. Aunt, how are you going to get a man if you don't know how to cook? Niece, oh, you're supposed to cook them? The last time was 2 years before, when apartment hunting in a city she would inhabit eventually. One day, after it had rained, which it does quite often with sudden ferocity in this new city, she left her umbrella to dry in S's hall. On the bus home, she got a text, "You left your red umbrella." Months later, after she had moved and long after it had ended, S gave her a new umbrella, bigger, stronger, and redder than the one she'd left. By way of explanation, "I broke the other one," S said. Kitty tickler dance, catnip mouse and lunging cat, chocolate crumbs and fresh licked pan, white wine woozy on Friday night, and damn that track, singing consonantal bounce. Studies fail to differentiate between choice and circumstance, though nearly a third of non-cohabitating women between the ages of 18 and 60. Butter, browning, whipped, puff, beaten, creamed, and almost crushed, sugar, petal, pinched to blush, honey, soften up your dates, toothpicks testing half-baked cakes. Chrissy and Daphne are trying out a new thigh harness. That is the entire premise. Has Chrissy's thigh fallen asleep under the sustained vigor of Daphne's grind? Daphne's mouth falls open, an exaggerated O. Cracked and yoked, that slippery trope, crusty, crumbled, fillings poked. The umbrella that once withstood torrents is older now and full of angles. Its barbs could take an eye out if you weren't looking up. Seriously sexy. We are looking for 16 heterosexual couples who have been monogamous longer than 6 months, are willing to be sexually active as part of this study, are available for up to 14 weeks. Sated, baited, or sublimated, wedge or linchpin obfuscated. One toothbrush, one frying pan, one packed lunch, one radio blaring fresh air, one magazine on one nightstand, one stack of Christmas cards, one Frida Kahlo wall, one calendar riddled with asterisks, one cat bounding from the window ledge. Alliance, allegiance, a law, a license, a limit, illicit, alone, defiance. Out on a date? Pumpkin soup, creme brulee. She looks across a table at someone's face. Gooey, fruity, and bourbon boozy, hot, sauced, and dressed up juicy. The last time she left her umbrella by way of explanation after it had ended, which it does quite often, she left it by way of explanation after it had rained with sudden ferocity, stronger than before in this new city. For a caramelized flavor, substitute brown sugar. Olive oil is more versatile than butter. Intimate or intimation, which cannot be replicated. It all comes down to chemistry, calculation, not improvisation. What acceptance desires over, what desire accepts equals. One umbrella, a solitary red. Thanks.
Naxos. Move if you can make out her mouth sort of miming to BB happy birthday and handing him a big bottle which is to illustrate the progress of civilization up to the present day that I was there when brought in Greek 4 packets of Corellius, Virginia, and brought back a big bottle fit for treason, stratagem, and spoils knocking the ball against the little house where I was born, beginning to see that too ugly make a pretty, moving upwards of a crooked village road not 10 miles from the mud baths we read about, as well as a foundry, coal breaker, machine shops, and lighthouse. Delos. After I woke up and thought how strange it was not to feel ashamed of this feeling that maybe I could actually kiss her and not be so worried about dreaming or dreams as strangers with something wielding from their content, even if perhaps only momentarily strangers or the marks of roses, a diffusion that soaks up detail. Like remember the band the boy plays in as a hill with rocks bifurcated on foggy strangers and shadows collected in grammar exuberantly articulate and wet in the mouth, forming portraits of strangers. Whistling, charging, calling, eraser, musical, horns, rampage, country, chief, believed of both, prince, wielder, so extensive, fortune, pervin, tools, 1615, scalped. This word comes from the fortune, Barney, saw chase, breezy, fortune, they could, chopper, great spirit for reals, in their dealings now Augusta, now Piraeus, now Athens, now Concord, now Geograph, EPA City, Fashu, Maine Indians have not given notice, janky. Mykonos. We explored them with great relish and obvious fascination for these generous bottles of Retsina to post up our hut with 2 wicker chairs and tackling this yet unsolved problem of moving some girls who were crazy as a bat, sketched with sufficient boldness to find a construction of horses and riders clearly as legible as the dogs and foxes barking their way through those white alleys and little groupings to give it scope. He could hear the same ballad on all the radios, from the same ballroom with yellows and oranges. Piraeus, mad, bad, and dangerous to know, bore George Gordon to the pageant of his bleeding heart and Philhellenic, pirated by radicals, reaching further and further to Cephalonia, devoted to his fortune in the shaft that paid the brigade, a remedy of bleeding heroism, on hearing the news, the Carbonari, dreaming the true Foscari, to beat the row in lasting eulogy. She walks in beauty at the crack of bark, the bloody news spoke from any writing on a rock. Byron is dead, and agreed to act as the agent on Viranos. He became a name, not an island, and subjugated to Byron is dead, so will go no more roving, immense and lasting. Thank you.
This is called Self-Portrait as Financial District. I have not lived in New York in 5 years, 7 months and 7 days, not that I'm counting. It's a great town though. Self-Portrait as Financial District. The language of commerce I know not about. The financial district and I, we share a nautical history. I am not a fun place, but I am not inconsequential. I matter to some people's pockets. Our shape is a craggy mystery. The borders of the financial district squeeze at the bottom like a uterus. Within my borders is a museum of American Indians and carts of hot dogs. I pop off during lunchtime. Sometimes there are happy hours, but at night I am cavernous, yawning. So many drugs circulate through our nervous system. Vitamins, leviathans, and Coke for lunch. We are filled with the ghosts of men in gray suits and varying elegance of shoe. I contain a dive bar wherein a waitress splits a matchstick, pinches it to her nipple, and lights it on fire for patriotism. I contain a defunct seaport filled with frumpy tourists and the occasional pleasure boat around a familiar body. There is a tuft of synthetic grass by Maiden Lane where families watch movies. A little bit breaks up the flow, but you know. This is Mannahatta, where a man becomes a bridge, where the land and the faint smell of chum shifts provenance from trader to trader. Now there is a splendid park built on the scars of disaster. We are occupied by uneven grounding. At night we hum with the voices of people who passed through us, headlines of discarded newspapers, the clip of solitary feet on cobblestone. So 2 from the book, and the book is I'm Your Huckleberry Brooklyners. Thanks, JoJo. French New Wave cinema. We have fans in the house of French New Wave cinema. Because I don't care for Godard, I am the loneliest poet. Go, Dart, to the heart of my beloved. Tell him we mythologize each other when we're apart. Tell him I'm a bit of a tweaker. No, I don't actually sleep with deers out here. Check your navigational charts. In fact, a perfectly respectable club jam came on the radio today. Tell him I'm sorry for accidentally kicking him in the gonads. It's too bad, too. I had imagined us on a gondola in a scenic place, funded carte blanche with affection. Tell him I don't do goulash without meat. Tell him of my love for gorgonzola cheese, garbanzos. Tell him of my objectionable tartness. Don't forget that part. My goal is to go steady. Although I'm rather cerebral, I don't know shit about beer. The avant-garde can't protect me here. If I need you, I know you'll be available to hold my mitten on a starry evening. Oh, tell my love nothing. I'll do it myself. Decidedly lyrical. Her sleeves slapped in the breeze, Louise. Her sleeves slapped like sails. Summer returned. She sloped down the hill on her bicycle. Her hair smelt of fire. Her hair silty sweet. The fire smelt of umami. Winter sledge be gone. In lack of slush, she slaked her need for ashen breath. For sherbet, the night was warm. She heard the sand flapping slaughter baddies of winter in simpering winds. No sleep but her hair honeyed and bushy. The sound of her sleeve slipping through a path in space. In movement, a sliver, a sluice of a woman, audible and alone in the night.
The Kennedys were down at Riverside Park today. Jack in a V-neck, the color called Seafoam in the crew catalog. Threw a football with the lanky junior, 11, and all legs, juking, beaming at his living father, and laughing when the president yelled, "Cold in here? Start the fire," which made no sense on such a sunny day. I must have heard incorrectly. Sigh. Every word seems so precious, now they've all gone away. Strange to find them here where the wide river crotches open to expose the mill with its one decaying tan factory, one gray, one long conveyor, and a reposed cone of quartzite. I don't mean to emphasize crotch in a crass way. All of these old power plants and industrial parks have positive aesthetic qualities when seen with some perspective. Smokestacks provide scale and chart the sweep of human history. And I think it's lovely to imagine how they've built our time. Distant giants of industry, Mikes, Teds, and Darrells, all on such a day piloting their boats across the globe. While I look up and see the shadow of Camelot's football vanish in the shadow of our large Hiawatha statue, a Zimmerhockle, Andrew, 1962. The light temporarily dims, as it sometimes will. Seafoam becomes a mossier shade, and the boy reaches for his cell phone as the ball wobbles away. History describes it as a tumultuous era, the 60s, when justice and peace might have broken free of slogans and become a kind of reality. But I think Bugs Bunny was the greater influence on Zimmerhockle, whose huge pastel chief seems most poised to step back into a TV that might be loaded on an Acme truck and driven off a cliff. Ah, poof. Our Hiawatha, arms crossed with a peace pipe, high above the paddle wheeler and friendship garden, makes history fun, as Jack would have wanted for everyone. Lifelong fitness and satisfaction, the kind beyond fuels and distribution, the kind that goes bronze in late summer sun. Thanks.
Pronunciation marks are proof of one's own cultural sentience. Those authentic reverberations. Above the cap height where breath pressures tongue against teeth. Below the baseline where throat exhales the long accent vowel. In that moment, it echoes through. Nose quivers as phonemic air. The ogotic tickle of clean. Too uncolored. Use paper tweezers, pinch free the ink delicately like pin bones from a fish. Pull out stems, crossbars, ascenders, and descenders. Now, place the page inside a crucible. Fill with chlorine and bring to a boil. Add a measure of borax to help cleanse serif blotches. Place a lid atop of it. Wait momentarily. When edges of type are anti-alias, the limits of language restrain. In the meantime, think of folio steam burns, its layers blistering lamp black, color fluid discharging, and then liquid parching. Do not damage the surface. A smudge is immutable. Even its dense sentences and paragraphs should begin to degrade as the pulp loosens. Watch as the letter disarticulates from its baseline like a pivotal joint unhitching from a spine through maceration. It's in that moment print attains a satori of blankness, permutes the paper of complete space. Cephalic. I place a dot. I place a black cloth the size of a dot over his head, wrap his entire minuscule body with a thread of my black hair. He lies there on a white sheet of paper and squirms like a dark cocoon, thinks he is going to transform. The letter, when it begins to lose color in a book never opened, becomes a macula in thought. And when read through the lens of a decimal point, see its dark fleck of a cranium, see expendable language. Grab the letter J next to him. Hold it like a tiny black sigh. Behead the I and watch its dot head roll to the back of a sentence. Thank you.
It's a little prose piece called The Sickness That Comes from the Longing for Home. 1. When I was well into middle age, I decided I should learn modern Greek. I had several teachers, all very good, all excited about the histories of Greek words. My last teacher knew the nuances of American English and of our popular culture despite a lingering Greek accent. Still, he was the first to admit gaps in his knowledge. In one lesson, he got excited about nostalgia. Nostos, he said, the return to the home, the longing to return, the thing that motivated Odysseus through all those years of war and voyaging, past all those barriers thrown up by the gods. And algos, pain or sickness, not quite the same word as the root for allergy, but you get the point. Nostalgia, then, is the sickness that comes from the longing for home. What a beautiful word. It describes an essential emotion, like no other word I know. But I interrupted. For us, the word nostalgia has taken on pejorative connotations. You know, a kind of sloppy sentimentality about a past that never existed. Nostalgia? Sloppy sentimentality? Never. It is the sickness that comes from the longing for home. Nonetheless, I said, it's not a word we use seriously very much, at least not about a genuine emotion. But what? He said, and he looked more hurt and puzzled. What then do you call the sickness that comes from the longing for home? 2. 40 years ago, when I was living my bohemian years, hitchhiking through Great Britain, Ireland, and France, finding work wherever I could, and accepting it gladly for food and lodging, sleeping in barns, ditches, youth hostels, or in caves down along the Mediterranean, I would play a little game with the freaks and hippies I found myself staying with. A few of them were North Americans, but most were from Western Europe or Australia. Occasionally, there would be a wanderer from Czechoslovakia, Japan, or Korea. Every one of these young people, all of us languidly searching for the fringe, seemed to have some version of one bit of folk wisdom, no matter what our mother tongue. A rolling stone gathers no moss. But we seemed to understand it in radically different ways. These differences may no longer exist. It was a long time ago. Now in North America, the children of the flower children are staring into middle age, and the attitudes of American popular culture have moved much further into the world than they once did. Even back in the day, the evidence from the game I played could only have been considered anecdotal. Still, back then, every North American I asked, when they heard or thought of a rolling stone gathers no moss, understood the stone as the positive element in the phrase, bravely rolling into some unknown future, freeing itself from that sticky moss. And everyone else, even the Australians, understood that the moss was the positive element. The poor stone was to be pitied, never having the chance to collect any of that good moss that grows around home.
So, I-95. Big rigs sashay across broken lines to the windshield wipers aria. Top of the skyscraper, woman who's afraid of heights wears a skirt that isn't. Laptop on a park bench, woman watches a movie of people in a park. Workaday dawn, two friends recognize each other revolving through revolving doors. Boston, even luck has standards, poker punk. I was on a canoe trip in South Texas for 6 days, Pecos River. My hand, and we walked down this long cavern. My hand upon a man's hand, blown red with paint dust 10,000 years ago. Walking our canoe in tall grasses alongside the river rush, I hear a taxi slam into a dump truck. The South. Crawfish, 100 perhaps, boiling in a pot, a lava of spooning hordes. We'll suck the juices from their heads and sex ourselves to sleep. The Midwest. Chipping away the storefront lettering, an apothecary becomes a pharmacy. This is Haas in Florida. Bob Haas, I was lucky enough to study haiku with, actually. He did some amazing things while mid-class. He would just interrupt himself and just start speaking. Interrupting our class with silence to identify a bird by its vocalizations. You asked why dead people stay that way. Big sky country. Cruising the dark plains at top speed, yellow-green eyes hitchhike my low-gas fear. Somebody shout out after 3 minutes. Red Rock Canyon, horse between my legs, carries the extra weight of breakfast on his mind. Vegas, 1 drink, 2 drinks, 3 drinks floor. MGM Grand, this is a hotel in Vegas. Lion in the hotel puts on a show of being a lion. I had some buddies that worked at LucasArts before Disney bought them out, so it was always fun visiting them in San Francisco because there's this, I'll read this part. Yoda sits atop the fountain. Atop he is not, being the fountain. The fountain he is not, being Yoda. The Pacific Northwest. We travel all these places. Whitney and I, this is what we do, we like to travel. Mount Rainier National Forest. Live 1,000 years and they honor you with a bench made from yourself. Over many springs, these trees have changed their minds on how the rocks should look. The campfire spits, turns away, and exhales. Best to let it cool off. This glacier knows how to build a valley, but lacks confidence. New wind carries smoke from a car bomb into the terminal. Belize, and the TV of my goggles, a stingray folds its smooth fist over the cock of a nurse shark. Glazed over look of pond carp as they nip the dark surface, every bar with a mirror. Outside Xi'an, empty cities rise from nothing, for nothing, through smog for no one climb for never. South Africa. Window, electric fence, what separates lions from an international breakfast. The activist cuts leopard bait from the blessed box rough hide as maggots eat out a circle of praise. In this heat, the kind of animal you are emerges on the slopes. This is Algarve, Portugal. And the crisp sun in the crag caverns of the bathwater heat of low tide anemones. Mayfly in my coffee stroking, God damn it, down my throat. Rickshaw cyclist bows his legs nicely in a slow dance up a steep hill. The October moon arrives with a French manicure propositioning stars. Sawgrass wilting, Bald man on a park bench popping bubble wrap. Lady in the yellow hat who looks like a rat knows it. Sorry, some of this. Two escalators running parallel in opposite directions. New Year's Eve. Don't feel bad for your lost aspirin bottle. You empty like a good parent. I like that. All right, I have just a few more. Was it 3 minutes?
That's it.
Oh, is that it?
Done.
All right, let me read 2 more. 3 more. I'll read 3 more, that's it. The novels of Don DeLillo, each airport, every waiting room, a figure figures a figure or two. Someone coughs back. Young man strokes his iPhone, its slender bulk, a suburb of brain, and a very fine one. Ant disappears down its hole. There are many cures for happiness. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. Thank you everyone for showing up, and thank you again for all the readers. Thank you to Paula.